Live long and prosper.
The Star Trek series is legendary among sci-fi fans with a run of over 50 years. Its theme music and the iconic USS Enterprise painted a dream universe where humanity transcends war to explore the cosmos. But behind Star Trek lie bizarre truths that viewers never see: endless quarrels among the cast's inexplicable symbols on the Starship, someone powerful trying to sabotage the show, and a strange connection with a real US authority agency. Below are 20-odd facts about Star Trek, and the number 10 secret will make you look at Spock with entirely different eyes. 1. The series was once deliberately and cruelly sabotaged by NBC. Star Trek was intentionally attacked by its network NBC. After 2 wildly successful seasons and strong fan support, NBC agreed to renew the show for a 3rd season. However, this was a cruel decision. They slashed the budget by over 60% and moved the show to a graveyard slot at 10 p.m. on Friday nights, a time when very few people watched TV. With the limited budget, writers were forced to reuse sets and restrict special effects, which severely impacted the quality of the show. This disappointed creator Gene Roddenberry so much that he completely withdrew from the series. Although they didn't officially cancel it, NBC indirectly killed Star Trek by creating a final season that was doomed to fail. But it didn't stop there. In 1965, NBC had already rejected the series once for being too philosophical and too slow, believing the project would fail. For some reason, they gave the series a second chance. And what happened after that, we all know. The show became a legend. However, the behind-the-scenes troubles were even more serious than budget battles. There's a secret few would have ever guessed, and it involves the 2 most iconic faces of Star Trek. 2. The 2 main actors didn't get along, and here's why. On screen, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were a legendary duo portraying the beautiful friendship between Captain Kirk and Spock. Their off-screen relationship, however, was much more complicated. In the early years, Shatner as the lead actor felt threatened by Nimoy's sudden popularity. This rivalry created a significant distance between them. Yet after many years of working together, mutual respect helped them overcome their differences and become close friends. But that friendship came to a sad end. In his final years, Nimoy suddenly cut off all contact with Shatner without any explanation. Many believe the reason was that Shatner used footage of Nimoy in his documentary The Captains without permission. Nimoy considered this a betrayal and never reconciled with Shatner before his death in 2015. But the conflicts between the actors weren't the most bitter part. The creator of this universe himself had to do something nobody expected in dire circumstances. 3. The creator of Star Trek was so hard up he sold scripts to make a living. After the original Star Trek series ended in 1969, Gene Roddenberry faced severe financial difficulties. To make ends meet and settle legal disputes, especially a complex divorce, he turned to an unconventional way of making money. In 1967, he founded a company to sell Star Trek-related products to fans. The company was initially named Star Trek Enterprises, but was later changed to Lincoln Enterprises to avoid legal trouble in case Roddenberry's name became associated with it. Lincoln Enterprises sold various items such as scripts, studio memos, photos, and even unaired film footage. Notably, the company sold copies of scripts and production documents directly from Desilu Productions. This violated the Writers Guild of America's rules because Roddenberry did not seek permission from the writers or share the profits with them. However, making money in Star Trek didn't just happen behind the scenes. Even within the universe, Roddenberry created money was a big issue. 4. You still need money everywhere, even in the Star Trek universe. Into the Star Trek universe, the most magnificent idea is that humanity has overcome greed and abolished money. However, if you look closely, you'll find that the reality is more complicated than you think. Although basic needs like food, housing, and education are provided for free within the Federation, money hasn't completely disappeared. In the original series, Captain Kirk once told Scotty that he had earned his week's pay, a small detail that shows money still existed. Outside, the Federation currency is even more essential. When trading with species like the Ferengi characters are forced to use some form of money for exchange. This proves that while the dream of a moneyless society in Star Trek is beautiful, it's still a long way off. But it wasn't just regular viewers who were captivated by the Star Trek universe. Even a powerful real-life organization became so obsessed with the show that they changed the history of aviation. 5. NASA was a superfan of the series. Star Trek had a profound impact on the real world. The series created a special relationship with NASA, becoming a source of inspiration and a training tool for generations of astronauts and engineers. NASA astronauts and engineers praised Star Trek for its incredible realism. They said the show's simulation of the chain of command communication protocols and propulsion theories was very close to reality, helping them better prepare for missions in space. Many even claimed that Star Trek taught teamwork and critical thinking more effectively than official training programs. Moreover, the characters in Star Trek became powerful, inspirational symbols, especially for women and people of color. One result was the recruitment of Sally Ride, the first American woman in space. And among the strangest things ever to appear on screen, there was a type of wine made from an ingredient so bizarre it will shock you. 6. Alderaan wine was made from. Something you would never guess. In the Star Trek universe, have you ever wondered how they created luxurious props with a limited budget? The mysterious green Alderaan wine bottle in Star Trek. The Next Generation was actually just a washed-out George Dickel whiskey bottle from Tennessee, filled with a green-coloured liquid and a new label. Similarly, Romulan wine was simply blue-coloured water. Borg props, instead of being intricately crafted, were sometimes made from dental tools or parts of model trains. But if you think only the wine was magically transformed, wait until you hear the truth about the magnificent Klingon armour. Because what looks like metal is actually a very familiar item. 7. Klingon combat armour was actually packaging material. In the original series episode, Day of the Dove, the Klingons appeared in fierce-looking combat uniforms. But did you notice a very interesting detail on their belts? Instead of using expensive materials, the production team repurposed bubble wrap, the kind of material used for packaging, painted it gold, and used it to create raised details that looked just like combat armour. And just like that, the production team saved a ton of money and transformed a common item into a prop with a distinct sci-fi feel. And if you think using bubble wrap for armour was the most creative thing they did, wait until you hear that the Theficarious ship was made from an even more everyday item. 8. The Theficarious ship was made from something we are all very familiar with. In the episode, the Corbomite Maneuver, a giant spherical ship named Theficarious appeared, stunning the Enterprise crew. However, the secret behind its high-tech appearance was incredibly simple. The ship was made almost entirely from ping-pong balls. The production team cut hundreds of ping-pong balls in half, glued them to the surface of a model, and painted it. On the low-resolution TVs of the 1960s, this detail created a perfect effect, giving the impression of an advanced alien starship. But Star Trek wasn't just creative visually, even the most iconic gestures in the series hid a surprising cultural story. 9. The Vulcan salute came from a Jewish gesture. If you're a die-hard fan of the series, you know "Live long and prosper," the Vulcan salute that has become a Star Trek icon. But few people know that its origin was not in the script at all. This legendary gesture was created by Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock, based on the Kohanik's blessing, a gesture used by Jewish priests. As a child, Leonard Nimoy saw Jewish people perform this gesture. Years later, while filming the episode Amok Time, he felt the Vulcans needed a distinctive greeting and suggested this gesture. The director immediately agreed, and a great symbol of science fiction was born. When Nimoy passed away in 2015, The gesture was widely used to honour him. Many NASA astronauts who were fans even used it in space as a special tribute. But that symbol is just the surface of a much stranger story. Few people know that one of Star Trek's most iconic technologies was born out of a very unexpected reason. 10. The transporter idea was created because the production team lacked money. The transporter has become a symbol of Star Trek. But do you know its origin? The interesting thing is that the idea didn't come from a far-flung science fiction concept, but from a very practical reason: a tight budget. With limited funds, filming the spaceship landing on each planet in every episode was impossible. So how did the production team solve this problem? They came up with a creative solution: a machine that could beam people from the ship to the ground in an instant. And just like that, the transporter not only solved the money problem, but also made the stories move faster and become more dramatic. But not every bold idea came from veteran writers. One particular plot point came from a 10-year-old boy. 11. The idea of Spock. Being cloned came from a 10-year-old fan. In 1973, an extraordinary story happened during the production of the Star Trek animated series. A 10-year-old boy named Fred Bronson, who was a huge fan, submitted a creative script about Spock being cloned. Surprisingly, Walter Koenig, who played Czechov, was captivated by the idea. He not only read it, but also enthusiastically helped Fred edit and refine the script. The result? The episode titled The Infinite Vulcan became an official part of the Star Trek universe and was written by a boy who was only 10 years old. But Spock being cloned is just a small piece of the behind-the-scenes maze. Because what seems like the smallest detail, Spock's iconic pointed ears, became a persistent nightmare for the actor Leonard Nimoy himself. 12. Behind Spock's pointed ears was a real nightmare. Spock's most iconic feature, his pointed ears, was a true nightmare for Leonard Nimoy. Initially, these prosthetic ears were made from flimsy latex foam, and under the hot studio lights, they began to melt right on Nimoy's face. Each pair of ears could only be used once, forcing the crew to constantly pause to re-glue and shape them. This was not only time-consuming, but also incredibly uncomfortable, as the special adhesive used to attach the ears was very difficult to remove, causing him pain after each shoot. Despite the difficulties, these ears became an indispensable part of the character. Today, the prosthetic ears have gone down in history and are displayed at the National Air and Space Museum. But not every detail on the Enterprise was serious. There's a mysterious label that appeared on many of the ship's pipes that turned out to be a joke. 13. GNDN was actually a joke by the designers. If you have a sharp eye and observed the pipes running along the walls of the Enterprise, you might have noticed an interesting detail. Some pipes were labelled GNDN. Don't mistake this for a technical term, because it was actually an inside joke among the set designers. GNDN is an acronym for the humorous phrase, goes nowhere, does nothing. But if you think the joke stopped at the pipes, you've underestimated the humour of the Star Trek design team. They hid even more ridiculous details. 14. The Starship diagram screen contained very humorous details that few people noticed. In the Next Generation, the Starship diagram screens on the bridge weren't just for background. The design team added countless hilarious Easter eggs to them. If you look closely, you can see a sports Porsche, an old airplane, a duck, a mouse, and even a hamster running on a wheel, which was jokingly said to be the ship's real power source. These small details turned a serious technical diagram into a joke, and only the most dedicated fans who watched multiple times discovered these funny details. But the humour in Star Trek wasn't limited to hidden details. Behind the series' most famous battle is a secret that makes today's audience wonder whether to laugh or cry. 15. The secret behind the most cringy battle. The battle between Kirk and Gorn in the episode Arena is probably one of the most cringy fights in Star Trek history. William Shatner missed his punches, the Gorn's costume ripped and the rocks on the set were just foam. It was a clumsy and ridiculous scene, but it became unforgettable. The battle has been parodied, remade, and even lovingly recreated in modern Star Trek, proving that sometimes the worst film scene can be the most memorable. But after the missed punches and foam rocks, Star Trek had another trick up its sleeve to appeal directly to teenage girls. 16. The character. Czechov was created to attract teenage girls. By season 2 of the original Star Trek series, NBC began to make a new demand: they needed more sex appeal to attract a younger audience. Executives frankly told Gene Roddenberry that they needed a Davy Jones-type character, an icon of youthful charm to appeal to teenage girls. So how could a legendary sci-fi show adapt to market trends without losing its soul? In response, Roddenberry introduced Ensign Pavel Czechov with his signature mop-top haircut and lively style. This wasn't an artistic decision, it was a carefully calculated marketing strategy to broaden the audience. And the most surprising thing, the person who saved this series wasn't a producer or a movie star, but a real-life television icon. 17. Star Trek was saved by a powerful TV personality. Star Trek was almost forgotten forever, if not for the intervention of an unexpected figure, the Queen of Television, Lucille Ball. As the head of Desilu Productions, she made a bold decision. When NBC was hesitant to fund Gene Roddenberry's second pilot, Lucy personally vouched for it. Although she knew nothing about science fiction and was warned by board members that this decision could sink the studio, she remained resolute in her belief in the project. Thanks to Lucille Ball's trust, Star Trek was given a second chance. Without her, the series would have ended in 1965. Instead, she helped create a great universe that changed television history forever. However, not all behind-the-scenes stories of Star Trek are inspirational. There was an actress who appeared in the early episodes and then suddenly vanished without a trace. 18. Grace Lee. Whitney went through difficulties in the assault scene. Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman. Janice Rand in Star Trek went through a journey full of hardship and trauma. Do you know what she endured? Initially, Whitney was cast in a role that was supposed to be a love interest for Captain Kirk, but she was unexpectedly cut from the show after just a few episodes. What really happened? She revealed that she had been the victim of a sexual assault by a studio executive, and she believed that's what caused her career to be abruptly halted. One of her most difficult scenes was in the episode The Enemy Within, when an evil version of Kirk tries to assault Rand. Despite being deeply uncomfortable with the scene, Whitney noted that William Shatner was respectful in that moment. After many years of battling addiction, Whitney eventually returned to Star Trek in the films and the Voyager series. But personal trauma wasn't the only flaw behind the scenes of Star Trek. There's a detail that seems very precise, but actually originated from an unbelievable mistake. 19. The different badges on each ship were because of a production mistake. Initially, each ship in Star Trek had a different badge. The Arrowhead badge of the USS Enterprise became famous thanks to the appearances of Captain Kirk and Spock. However, other ships had completely different badges. For example, in the episode The Omega Glory, the production team made a mistake by designing a unique badge for the USS Exeter. This led to the misunderstanding that each ship had its own badge. However, a memo from 1967 clarified that all Starfleet personnel should wear the Enterprise Arrowhead badge, and the other badges were just production errors. But if you think the badge error was the strangest thing that almost happened to Star Trek, wait until you hear this. At one point, this serious series almost became a musical. 20. Star Trek almost had a musical episode. Initially, Star Trek almost had an episode that was nothing but singing. During discussions about the original series, creator Gene Roddenberry once proposed the idea of an episode in which Spock and the crew encounter an alien race that only communicates through music. This would force everyone, including Spock, to sing. However, Leonard Nimoy vehemently objected. He was horrified by the idea, believing it would completely ruin Spock's calm and logical image. Thanks to his firm stance, the idea was abandoned. Of all the behind-the-scenes secrets, which one surprised or impressed you the most? Leave a comment below and don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss out on the next exciting discoveries.